From being the world's first youngest self-made billionaire, that too is female, she went on to become the most hated woman in tech history. This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes, who was once considered the next Steve Jobs. The drop from the top of the world is a steep one, and it didn't take long for her name to be dragged across the world for her criminal behavior. She now has shows being made to depict her lies and fraud. But what did she do so wrong? Let's find out. Elizabeth Holmes was at the top of her game in 2014 at just 30 years old. She was a Stanford University dropout who established a $9 billion company that was meant to revolutionize disease diagnosis. Her company, Theranos, claimed that its Edison test, which only required a few drops of blood, could instantly identify diseases like diabetes and cancer without the inconvenience of using needles. On the board were prominent figures like James Mattis and Henry Kissinger. But by 2015, the cracks were beginning to show, and a year later, Holmes was proven to be a fraud. The technology she boasted about was completely useless, and by 2018, the business she formed had failed. But wait, let's rewind. Elizabeth Holmes' adventure began in 2002 at Stanford University, when she first intended to pursue a career in medicine before realizing she was terrified of blood and needles. She filed a patent for a wearable medical gadget that could monitor a patient's blood, as well as give medication as necessary. With it, an idea was born. Holmes left Stanford 2 years later and launched her company in her basement. All was well, right? Wrong. Holmes claimed to have patented technology that could identify diseases like cancer with just one drop of blood. She also misled investors into thinking Theranos provided more than 200 diagnostic tests, despite the fact that the business was discovered to be utilizing third-party equipment. Her ability to attract more than $700 million in investments from notable figures, including Oracle founder Larry Ellison, was based on these promises. She was able to get capital from investors without explaining how the technology worked, by highlighting the value of secrecy. The COO, Sunny Balwani, and Holmes ran the business under the false pretense that the technology worked, launching their blood testing device, the Edison. Oh, by the way, it was later discovered that Holmes and Balwani covertly dated throughout their time working together. This is important to the story, so stick around to find out more on this. Anyway, they kept raking in millions of dollars in cash, including many collaborations with significant healthcare companies like Walgreens, where they plan to open Theranos wellness centers around the country, and a $350 million agreement with Safeway. Holmes maintained her girl boss reputation throughout it all, and even appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune. Ian Gibbons, the chief scientist at Theranos, cautioned Holmes that the technology had flaws and wasn't yet suitable for widespread use. Just 2 months after rumors surfaced that Theranos was testing blood samples on conventional blood testing machines due to erroneous findings from their own Edison machine, the FDA opened an investigation into the firm in August 2015, after discovering significant errors in their testing. Theranos was under investigation by the FDA, the SEC, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services in 2016. In a letter to Theranos, the agency claimed that Theranos' lab did not adhere to compliance standards, and that its deficient practices pose immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. These revelations led Theranos to nullify 2 years' worth of blood tests, revise thousands of flawed reports, and get a 2-year operating lab ban from the FDA for Holmes. Also, the 40 Theranos wellness centers that they'd set up in Walgreens across the country also closed down. Holmes attempted a return after Theranos' lab was shut down with a different product called the MiniLab, which would allow her to get over the CMS's restrictions by selling the gadget rather than using it in its own labs. At the same time, 155 people were let go by Theranos as it tried to concentrate on the MiniLab and defend itself against various investor lawsuits. The SEC then accused Holmes and Balwani, who left the company in 2016, of massive fraud in March 2018. 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud were included in their indictment. Holmes was permitted to continue as CEO of Theranos because it was a privately held firm, but she was also required to give up financial and voting control of the business, pay a $500,000 fine, and return $18.9 million in Theranos stock. The The business announced its closure in September 2018, after 15 years in operation. During this time, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, Holmes' ex-boyfriend and business partner, was accused by Holmes during the trial of sexual and emotional abuse that affected her mental condition at the time of the alleged crimes. Balwani, who's accused of the same fraud in a trial that's set to begin soon, has denied the accusations and called them outrageous. The birth of Holmes' first child in July 2021 caused her trial to be postponed, despite her imminent legal issues. In January 2022, she was found guilty on 4 out of 11 federal offenses, including 1 count of conspiring to deceive investors and 3 counts of wire fraud. She's now free on a $500,000 bond, but if found guilty on all counts, she may spend up to 20 years in jail and pay a $250,000 fine. In order to face the nature of the charges and discourage Holmes and others from similar acts, prosecutors have asked for a 15-year term and $800 million in restitution. In the meantime, Holmes' attorneys asked for 18 months of home detention and no jail sentence, which is scheduled for November 18th. Sunny Balwani was found guilty of 2 counts of conspiracy to conduct wire fraud and 10 counts of federal wire fraud in July 2022. With a net fortune of $4.5 billion at the age of 30, Forbes declared Holmes the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. When more charges against Holmes surfaced in 2016, the publication revised its assessment of the number. Experts at the time concluded that $800 million was a more reasonable estimate, but the outlet calculated that her net worth was zero because she only held half of Theranos' stock and had a number of investors to repay. Now, she is the focus of a book, an HBO documentary, and planned TV shows and movies. But it's still unknown why she took such a risk with a piece of technology she was aware didn't work. She was raised in a comfortably wealthy family in Washington, D.C., and was known by those who knew her as a pleasant but reserved little girl. Holmes was born into privilege. Her wealthy family gave her the best opportunity by enrolling her in private school. Even though she had a younger brother who lacked her passion, her parents had high standards for their daughter and encouraged her goals. Despite having a fortunate upbringing, many have noted that Holmes' journey to fame was partially the result of luck and circumstance. Of course, there's also the argument that she was subjected to sexism and was treated unfairly on the basis of her gender, while many men get away with fraud in Silicon Valley. Elizabeth also advocated for this point of view, and as unfavorable headlines about her and her business grew, she made the decision to portray herself as a victim. It's important to note that past prosecutors have provided a number of explanations for why Holmes' case is unique compared to that of other disgraced CEOs. Her behavior is said to have been particularly stunning because the stakes were higher. After all, she was a biotech corporation in the healthcare industry, and she had a seemingly miraculous machine which barely accomplished anything at all. Prosecutors claim they have proof that Holmes behaved intentionally, which is quite difficult to find in a fraud case. Her actions are an example of noble cause corruption because she thought that lying was in the best interests of society. As her trial nears its conclusion, it becomes increasingly clear that Holmes' gender plays a significant role in this narrative. The fact that she was a woman in a field dominated by men had its own share of problems. But it's fair to say that the societal need for a female Steve Jobs contributed significantly to her rise to the status of legendary female businesswoman and STEM hero when she was far from it. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.